After I was hospitalized with a broken leg from a car crash, my boyfriend posted photos online. They showed him at a party with his former girlfriend. The caption read, "Finally free from the needy drama queen and her constant demands." We had been a couple for 4 years. I didn't respond to the post. This morning, my phone began vibrating incessantly with panicked messages from him and pleas from his mother asking me to rethink my decision. My relationship with Richard spanned 4 years. We first met when I was volunteering for a community garden project sponsored by my employer. I was on the Compost team, which he led. He jokingly referred to himself as the Compost King. I found his passion charming. He would give this speech about how decomposition is necessary for creating something new and beautiful, and I was completely captivated by the metaphor. Looking back after 4 years, I understand that the only thing that truly broke down was my own sense of self-worth. In all that time, Richard contributed to the rent on just 7 occasions. The lease was in my name alone because he claimed his credit was in a temporary rough patch. He was unemployed for roughly 60% of our relationship. Whenever he had any money, it was spent on his gaming equipment, new clothes, or nights out with his friends. He asked to use my car more frequently than he inquired about my day. But because I loved him, I justified his behavior. The previous week, I was in a serious automobile accident. Another driver went through a red light and hit the side of my car. I sustained a broken leg, 3 fractured ribs, and a concussion. Doctors told me it could have been worse, but I felt pretty terrible. Richard came to see me one time for about 20 minutes. He explained that being in a hospital made him too anxious and that he needed to handle the stress of the situation in his own manner. My best friend, Anastasia, was the one who truly cared for me. She slept in that awful hospital chair for 3 nights, helped me to the restroom, brought me decent food, and even washed my hair in the small sink since I couldn't shower. While I was on pain medication, I noticed Anastasia making a strange face while looking at her phone. I asked her what was wrong, and she tried to dismiss it, but I knew something was happening. I took her phone from her and saw it. There was Richard, his arm around his ex, Katie. The caption underneath called me a needy drama queen. I was completely stunned. 4 entire years. 4 years of my life spent providing him with emotional and financial support, enduring his various phases of self-discovery, his gaming obsession, and his refusal to do basic chores. And this is what he does when I'm lying injured in a hospital bed? The most painful part was reading the comments from our mutual friends, saying things like, "Glad you're happy, bro," and "You deserve better." Not a single person asked, "Hey, isn't your girlfriend in the hospital right now?" I didn't leave a comment. I didn't send him a text. I didn't call him. I just sat there and absorbed it all. And as I did, I remembered a crucial detail. Only my name was on the apartment lease. So I started making calls. I called my landlord and explained what had happened. I called my brother. I called my cousin. Together, we formed a strategy. Yesterday, with the help of my brother and his friends, we initiated the plan. We packed every item that belonged to Richard, every single dirty sock, every collectible figurine, every video game console and special controller, his prized craft beers, his autographed sports memorabilia, everything. We placed all of it into the dumpster behind our apartment building. The Compost King could now truly break down with the rest of the garbage. This may sound severe, but Richard had not paid any rent for the last 3 months. I had been hiding the notices from the landlord because I was ashamed my boyfriend couldn't pay his way. I took on extra freelance jobs to cover for him while he claimed to be out networking for opportunities. To make it even better, I discovered what Richard was really doing instead of visiting me. He was interviewing for a new job, a job that my personal contacts had helped him secure. He was supposed to start next week. Let's just say the hiring manager, who was the brother of my old college roommate, received some very revealing information about Richard's financial habits and trustworthiness, accompanied by screenshots of those social media posts about being finally free from his hospitalized girlfriend. This morning, my phone started ringing nonstop. Messages from Richard came flooding in.
Where's my stuff? Are you serious right now? You can't do this to me. Everything I own was in that apartment. My collector's items are worth thousands. You're going to pay for this." Then the messages shifted in tone. "Baby, please, I'm sorry. I was just drunk and stupid. Katie doesn't mean anything to me. I was just dealing with the stress of the situation. Please call me back. I love you so much. We can work this out. You're the only one I want." The best messages, however, came from his mother. Richard's mom has always acted like I was fortunate to be with her son. She called me in tears, saying I needed to reconsider what I had done. She said her son made a mistake but didn't deserve to have his life destroyed. She mentioned he told her about the other thing I did, the job situation, and that I was being vicious and cruel. And you know what? Maybe I am. But after 4 years of supporting a man who couldn't even visit me more than once in the hospital, who publicly announced his freedom from me while I was learning how to walk with crutches, I feel no regret. The lease is up for renewal next month. I will not be renewing it. I am moving in with Anastasia temporarily while I search for a new home. I look forward to a fresh start with furniture that isn't associated with memories of Richard playing games while I cooked, cleaned, and paid the bills. I do not regret my actions. I don't regret what I did, not one bit. I'm not worried about legal consequences. My cousin said since his name isn't on the lease and he hasn't financially contributed, he has little recourse. Plus, I have documentation of everything. Yes, I'm healing well, 6 more weeks in this cast, but the ribs are feeling better already. For those asking why I stayed so long, love makes you stupid sometimes. He wasn't always terrible, and the good moments made me think the bad ones were just temporary. Classic, I know. I'll update tomorrow with more of the fallout. His mother has now called me 17 times and left voicemails that range from sobbing to threatening. Richard apparently showed up at the apartment and the landlord wouldn't let him in. Your girl might have changed the locks first.
Update. I'm completely overwhelmed by the response to my last post. Thank you all so much for the incredible support, your kind words, and the helpful advice. It means the world. I promised an update, so here's everything that's happened. You'll recall I said Richard's mother had called me 17 times. That number has since climbed to 43. 43 calls in under 2 days. I finally picked up on the 44th attempt, hoping it would put an end to the constant ringing. Picture the scene. I'm settled on Anastasia's guest bed, my injured leg propped up on a stack of pillows, working my way through a bag of chips. I cope with stress by snacking. Meanwhile, Richard's mother, Deborah, spent 28 minutes cycling through tears, attempts to make me feel guilty, and not-so-subtle threats. Here are the key points from her rant. Richard has been sobbing non-stop for 2 days. I've never seen him in such a state. I found this ironic, considering I spent 2 days crying in the hospital when he couldn't be bothered to visit. Do you have any idea what those collectibles were worth? Some of those baseball cards were heirlooms from his grandfather. I wanted to ask if she had any idea what 4 years of rent looked like, because I certainly do, right down to the last cent. He was going to ask you to marry him. He even showed me the ring. Unless that ring was a symbol of broken promises and unpaid debts, I find that very hard to believe. We are considering legal action for destruction of property. I'd already checked with my cousin, who's a lawyer, and he confirmed this isn't a real threat. Then she said, Richard told me everything about how you've been manipulating his money and cutting him off from everyone he cares about. I actually laughed out loud at that. Me controlling his finances? This is the man who used our grocery budget to buy an expensive gaming keyboard. The man who convinced me to give him $3,000 for a cryptocurrency opportunity. The man who hasn't let me see his bank statements in 3 years. And isolating him? I was the one who organized his birthday celebrations. I chose and bought his mother's Christmas gifts. I was his chauffeur to family events after his car was taken back. But the conversation took a turn then. Instead of hanging up, I asked her a question. Deborah, can you tell me the last time Richard contributed to the rent? There was a pause before she replied. He explained that you had an understanding. You managed the housing costs, and he took care of other bills. What other bills specifically? I asked. Another silence. Well,
I don't have access to the details of your financial understanding. So I provided the details. I outlined his total financial contribution over our 4 years together. I explained the $17,000 in credit card debt I accumulated covering his share of our life. I described working extra shifts while he played games and built his network. I told her about selling my grandmother's jewelry to make rent after Richard promised a paycheck that never arrived. I could sense her perspective shifting through the phone line. "But he told me he was the one supporting you," she finally said, her voice quieter. "He said you lost your position and that he's been the provider." I lost my job? I've been with the same company for 6 years and have been promoted twice. Richard, on the other hand, has cycled through 7 jobs in 4 years, never staying at one for more than a few months. I didn't bother listing those facts. I just told her I would send her documents, bank records, lease receipts, text messages that painted the full picture. I also brought up the social media post he made while I was hospitalized, which she insisted she knew nothing about. She ended the call by saying she needed to have a conversation with Richard and would contact me later. I haven't heard from her since. It's interesting how that happened. Now to rewind and give you the details many asked for about the cleanup. With my leg broken, I couldn't manage the physical work. My brother, Dylan, was an absolute lifesaver. He brought 2 of his friends with him on their day off. I made sure to pay them for their time because, unlike some people, I believe in compensating people for their labor. We began with his most valued things: his elaborate gaming system, multiple monitors, a custom-built computer he bought for $2,800 while unemployed, his action figures kept in their original packaging to preserve value, his autographed sports items, which he never allowed me to display because they clashed with the apartment style he didn't help pay for, and his specialty beers, some from our first year together that he was maturing, but really just neglecting. The entire process took 4 hours. It was a 4-hour journey into the life of a grown man who never grew up, with complete socks, forgotten snacks, and receipts for things I never knew about. Watching my brother carry out Richard's special gaming chair, the one he called his throne like it was a hazardous object, was a moment I won't forget. We didn't vandalize anything. We didn't ruin his clothes or break his gadgets. We just moved them to a more appropriate place, with the rest of the trash. I did set aside a box with his important documents, birth certificate, social security card, some old family pictures, and medical files. The landlord is holding on to that box for him. After I showed him the posts and explained the situation, the landlord is completely supportive. He even assisted with changing the locks. Speaking of the landlord, he informed me that Richard came by twice demanding entry. The second visit ended with Richard threatening to call the police, a threat that evaporated when the landlord cheerfully agreed, suggesting they explain the months of missing rent together. It's remarkable how some people retreat when confronted with the truth. Now, about that other action I took. You remember I said Richard was about to start a new job, one he got through my contacts. It was at a financial firm. He would have been responsible for managing people's accounts and finances. The issue is, Richard can't manage his own finances.
Of course. Here is a rewritten version of the story that preserves the story's meaning, characters, and all dialogue while using new phrasing and descriptions to avoid copyright issues. This is a man who, on 2 consecutive days, overdrafted his bank account to purchase video games, having apparently forgotten the first incident by the time the second occurred. So I contacted my friend's brother and presented him with a simple, factual dossier: screenshots of Richard's less-than-professional social media activity, his complete lack of a verifiable rental history, and a selection of text messages where he proudly discussed manipulating systems to dodge his financial obligations. Petty? Perhaps. But ask yourself, would you trust your life savings to someone who can't manage to keep his own lights on? I didn't invent anything. I didn't embellish. I merely presented documented evidence of his character and fiscal habits. What the company chose to do with that information was their call. In short, they withdrew the job offer. Which leads to the latest chapter.
Richard has traded furious texting for melancholy emails, long, sorrowful messages about his deep reflection, his newfound understanding of his errors, and his desperate wish to reconcile. He now claims the posts with Katie were a performance, that they're merely friends and he was only acting out due to fear of losing me after my accident. These emails describe a transformed individual. He has recognized his faults. He is prepared to commit, to contribute, and to become a true partner. All it took was a near-fatal car accident involving me, 4 years of financial drain, public embarrassment on social platforms, the loss of all his belongings, a rescinded career opportunity, and being revealed to his own mother. Quite the discounted rate for a personality overhaul. Remy, Richard's old college roommate, got in touch with me. It seems Richard has been sleeping on his sofa, spending a great deal of time weeping and simultaneously plotting how to regain my affection. Remy's intention was to give me a warning that Richard is brainstorming some large-scale romantic display to demonstrate his devotion. I thanked Remy for the warning and requested he inform me if Richard mentions anything alarming. He agreed and even apologized for never recognizing Richard's true nature. As it happens, Richard is also in debt to Remy. I'm utterly astounded. Truly. Frankly, I'm just exhausted. Physically from the accident and emotionally from this endless theatrics. But I'm also sensing something I haven't felt in ages, a sense of lightness. It's as if I've been hauling a massive weight for years and it has suddenly vanished. My shoulders physically feel less burdened. Tomorrow holds a follow-up doctor's visit for my leg, and afterward, Anastasia and I are virtually touring apartments. My lease is up in 30 days, and the thought of a new beginning feels exhilarating. Thank you for hearing out this lengthy recap. I'll provide another update if something significant occurs, particularly if Richard executes his grand plan. Given his history, it will likely be profoundly unsuitable, shockingly inexpensive, or engineered to somehow center attention on him. Maybe all three at once. Edit. Many have asked for my car. It was declared a total loss after the crash. Insurance is processing the claim, but the final settlement is still pending. Currently, I'm getting around with Anastasia's help and ride-sharing services. Edit 2. For those worried about Richard becoming a physical threat, please set your minds at ease. My apartment complex has monitored cameras, Anastasia's building has a concierge, and Richard is, more than anything, a person who lacks courage. He boasts loudly, but retreats from any genuine confrontation. Second update. Greetings again, my online confidants. I'm back with more news, and honestly, the plot twists never stop. Find a comfortable seat, top off your drink, and get ready. This tale has more loops than my tangled backyard hose. First, a health update for those who asked. My follow-up appointment was positive. The doctor says my leg is mending well and I could be free of this enormous cast in 4 weeks instead of 6. My ribs still ache if I laugh too intensely, which has been difficult given the absurdity of recent days. Now, for the main event you're all waiting for. The grand gesture has been made, and it was precisely as foreseeable, lackluster, and self-absorbed as predicted. Yesterday afternoon, while I was at Anastasia's browsing rental listings, her doorman called up to announce a delivery for me. We were expecting nothing, so Anastasia went down to investigate. She came back 5 minutes later wearing the most puzzled look and carrying, you won't believe it, a compost bin. A real plastic tub full of soil, worms, and what looked like vegetable peels. Resting on top was a note written by hand. Like compost, our love can break down and rebuild into something stronger. I'm decomposing my old self to become the man you deserve. Please give us another chance to grow together. I am not inventing this. The Prince of Compost genuinely believed equating our romance to decaying organic matter would rekindle my affection. The sheer nerve, the complete detachment from reality. Anastasia and I laughed until my ribs screamed,
and I needed more painkillers. She snapped a picture of me looking utterly perplexed beside this pail of soil and posted it to her Instagram with the caption, "When your BFF's ex believes worms are the key to romance." But there is more. Buried within the compost, yes, he placed objects in the active decomposition, was a tiny velvet box holding a ring now coated in organic matter. It wasn't a quality piece, it was unmistakably fake. The stone was plastic, and the metal was already leaving a green tint on my skin from a brief hold. A date was inscribed inside, 04/22/21. For reference, that is the birthday of his previous girlfriend. He actually gifted me a repurposed ring likely originally intended for Katie but never given. A hand-me-down ring inside a compost bin. The metaphor is almost too perfect.
I sent him a simple message. The compost bin is the perfect place for our relationship, rotting away with the worms and trash. He immediately blew up my phone, insisting the ring was only a placeholder until he could buy a real one, and that the engraved date marked the moment he first knew he loved me. I didn't reply. Instead, my friend Anastasia, my absolute savior, carried the compost bin to the dumpster behind her apartment and filmed herself tossing the contents out before sending the video to him. You might recall I mentioned sending financial documents and receipts to Richard's mother, Deborah. She finally responded. Her first email was incredibly long, moving through what felt like the 5 stages of grief in writing. Denial. There has to be an error in these documents. Richard assured me he was helping with the finances. Anger. How could you paint my son in such a light? You must have altered these records. Bargaining. If money was so tight, why didn't you reach out? I could have helped you two figure things out. Depression. It breaks my heart to think my son would act like this. I brought him up better. Acceptance. I need to apologize. I didn't understand what was truly going on, and I'm sorry for how I allowed this to continue. I was stunned. A real apology from Deborah, who always insisted her son could do no wrong. This was a first. She called me afterward, just once, not dozens of times, and shared some eye-opening details. Richard had been telling his family for years that he was the one supporting me. He said I was too unreliable to keep a job, that the apartment was in his name and he was letting me live there out of kindness, and that the wrecked car was actually his that he allowed me to use. He had been asking relatives for money, blaming my irresponsible spending for their financial troubles. The web of lies he spun. If he had put that creativity into actual work, he might not have needed to deceive everyone who trusted him. Deborah was visibly upset and humiliated. She admitted giving Richard more than $155,000 over the last 2 years for what she now understands were made-up crises. She said sorry again and again for her earlier reactions and admitted she needed space to process it all. I honestly felt for her. She'd been manipulated even longer than I had. I told her she wasn't to blame and that Richard could be very persuasive. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. I will always love my son, but it's time he learned what accountability means. I won't be rescuing him this time. Real change! I could hardly believe it. Now, for the update many have asked about, what else did I do besides the job situation and the compost bin? Those credit cards I told you about, the ones with $177,000 in debt from covering Richard's share? Well, 3 were joint accounts he opened using my information to build his credit, though he never paid a cent toward them. I've been working with my bank and a financial advisor to untangle the accounts and identify which expenses were his. It's taken time, but I was able to show that about $111,000 of that debt came from his spending. I didn't only share this with his prospective employer. I also sent the information to his parents, his brother, and friends we had in common, along with a brief warning.
If Richard asks you for money or a place to stay, this is what will likely happen. It might seem harsh, but it's the truth. And truth is the only thing that clears the air after so much deception. Even Katie, the woman from the social media post, reached out to me. She wrote, "I didn't know you were in the hospital. Richard told me you two split up months ago. I'm so sorry." Months? We were still together right up until my accident. The stories he made up? I answered her kindly and let her know I didn't hold it against her. She told me Richard had been messaging her for weeks before that party, saying we were on a break and he wanted to start over with her. She felt awful and offered to send me their conversation history. I told her it wasn't necessary. I'd seen enough, but I appreciated her honesty. Richard came by Anastasia's building again last night. The doorman wouldn't let him upstairs. I'm definitely sending that man a thank you gift. So Richard made a scene in the lobby, shouting that he needed to explain things to me. The doorman called the police, but Richard took off before they showed up. Then he called me 37 times over 2 hours. I didn't pick up, but his voicemail said it all. "Just talk to me. I can make you understand. I always plan to pay you back. You're destroying my life. I've got nowhere. My mom won't take me in. I'm sleeping in my car. If you don't call me back, I don't know what I'll do." That last one worried me, so I requested a wellness check. I knew he'd been staying with his friend Remy. The police said he was okay, just very upset, and suggested he look into counseling. Not long after, Remy texted me, "Heads up, Richard's not welcome here anymore. I caught him stealing $200 from my wallet. I've already changed the locks." Unbelievable. Even when he's at his lowest, he can't stop himself from taking. So here's where things stand. Richard is hopping between couches, running out of people who will trust him. His family won't help. His friends are turning away. He has no job lined up. Almost everything he owned is gone. No one sees him the same way anymore. As for me, I'm getting better, physically and emotionally. I found a good new apartment that's cheaper than where I am now. Anastasia has been incredibly supportive. My family is behind me all the way. My workplace has been flexible while I recover. There's still anger and hurt, but more than anything, I feel relief. It's like I've been holding my breath for 4 years and can finally breathe again. There likely won't be many more updates. I'm ready to close this chapter and start the next. But thank you to everyone who offered support, guidance, and much-needed humor. This community helped more than you know during one of the most difficult times of my life.
First, the practical updates. I moved. I'm officially in my new apartment as of yesterday. It's smaller than my old place, but it has this tiny balcony where I've already started a container garden. The building has an elevator, crucial for the broken leg situation, and security cameras, crucial for the ex-boyfriend situation. My cast is off, 2 weeks earlier than expected. I'm still using a walking boot, and physical therapy is no joke. I sweat more in PT than I ever did at the gym, but I can move around independently now, which feels amazing. My car insurance finally paid out. I bought a used but reliable Ford that I've named Freedom. Cheesy, I know, but I'm leaning into it. She takes a breath, her expression turning more serious. Now for what you're really here for, the Richard saga conclusion. After my last update, things escalated before they finally resolved. Richard's desperation reached new heights when he realized his usual tactics, crying, begging, guilt-tripping, weren't working. He tried a new approach, public shaming. He created a GoFundMe titled Homeless After Girlfriend's Revenge. He spun a completely fictional tale about how I stole his money and threw away family heirlooms after a minor argument. He included pictures of himself looking sad on what was clearly his friend Remy's couch before Remy kicked him out. He claimed he needed $5,000 to get back on his feet. The fundraiser lasted exactly 6 hours before it was taken down. Why? Because my best friend Anastasia, my brother Dylan, and at least a dozen of our mutual friends reported it for fraud. Plus, several people commented with links to my Reddit posts I had never shared with Richard.
Seeing his public grift exposed apparently triggered something in him. He showed up at my old apartment building, thankfully I was already staying at Anastasia's, and caused enough of a scene that the police were called. According to my former neighbors, he was yelling about defamation and lies and demanding to be let in to get his things. When the police arrived, Richard tried to convince them that he lived there and I had illegally locked him out. This backfired spectacularly. The landlord confirmed Richard was not on the lease. Richard couldn't produce any mail or ID with that address. Multiple neighbors testified they knew I lived there alone. The police ran his ID. They discovered he had an outstanding warrant for unpaid traffic tickets. Yes, my friends, Richard got arrested. Not for the scene he was causing, because of the $1,200 in unpaid tickets he'd been hiding the mail for the past 2 years. Tickets I had no idea existed, because he'd been hiding the mail. He spent 2 nights in jail before his brother, not his mother, interestingly, bailed him out. According to mutual friends, this experience was apparently the wake-up call Richard needed. He's since moved in with his brother, who is making him pay rent. He started working at his brother's company, and he stopped contacting me entirely. That last one is the most significant development. After weeks of constant calls, texts, emails, and dramatic gestures, the silence was sudden and absolute. No more 3 a.m. voicemails, no more essay-length emails about how he's changed, no more compost-based metaphors. At first, I was suspicious. Was this some new tactic? According to his brother, who reached out to check on me, surprisingly, Richard is genuinely trying to get his life together, and part of that process is leaving the past behind. Translation, his therapist probably told him to stop harassing me. She looks down at her hands, then back up, her expression softer but resolute. That brings me to the most important update, my mental and emotional state. I've been seeing a therapist of my own, thanks workplace insurance, and we've been unpacking some hard truths. I stayed with Richard not just because I loved him, but because fixing his problems gave me purpose and identity. I overlooked red flags because I was afraid of being alone. I enabled his behavior by constantly bailing him out. I valued myself so little that I thought his scraps of affection were all I deserved. These realizations haven't been easy to face. There were sessions where I cried until my ribs hurt all over again. But acknowledging these patterns is the first step to breaking them. As for Richard's mother, Deborah, we had one final conversation that brought unexpected closure. She invited me to lunch at a restaurant with ramp access for my leg, a thoughtfulness Richard never showed. We had a surprisingly honest discussion. She apologized again for not seeing what was happening and for raising a son who thought it was acceptable to treat partners this way. She revealed that Richard's father had similar patterns before their divorce, and she worried she had normalized financial irresponsibility and emotional manipulation. At the end of lunch, she handed me an envelope containing $2,000 in cash. She mimics holding an envelope. She said, "This doesn't begin to cover what he owes you, but it's what I can do right now." I initially refused, but she insisted, "This isn't from Richard, this is from me, because I failed as a mother if I raised someone who would treat you this way." I accepted the money. I used it to furnish my new apartment. A fresh start without any remnants of Richard's presence.